Oh, hello there. I didn't see you come in. Hello, Church of STFU. So this will be a video response to you. And I want to do this in probably two parts. I apologize about the bad lighting, but I'm doing this at night because I was a lazy fuck all day and I did other things besides do a video response to you. So you're going to have to put up with the bad lighting. I could adjust it. I could do that. Or I could do that. But I don't think you want that. So let's stick with this, okay? So anyway, I do apologize about broadcasting your voice like that. I didn't know you didn't like it. Maybe now in the future I won't do that to people. But I, for one, really like it because I can make sort of responses on the fly and it's a lot easier for me. But I also like writing it out too, and it sort of gives me a script and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know. It could go either way, I guess. But anyway, as an aside, before I begin, I do want to say it's kind of funny that you and I are disagreeing more than Green Ghost and I are disagreeing. After all, I don't identify as an ANCAP, nor do I think a lot of the anarcho-capitalist rhetoric or substantial theory is actually true or useful for anarchist dialogue at any rate. I've yet to read a lot of Rothbard or Hans Hermann Hoppe or Walter Block, so I still do not entirely reject anarcho-capitalism because I've not read many of its major thinkers. I've just interacted with many ANCAPs, and I'm not usually impressed. So, let's begin. I think I'll do. I have like 14 different points, and I'll do it seven points each on each video. I am limited by my time because I'm like a late video, like I'm a late channel or something like that, and basically I can upload videos more than 15 minutes long, but I can't record videos more than 15 minutes long or something stupid like that. So I'll try to get as much done as I can, and I hope I substantially talk back to your points. I hope we can keep this respectful and all that good stuff. I do respect a lot of your opinions and positions. So let's, try to keep this friendly, I guess. I don't know. I don't see why it wouldn't be. But anyway, let's get started. Let's get started. So, you start off with a gun to the head. You talk about, the gun to the head, how it wasn't fair, but how the second one was fair. Basically, all I'm going to say to that is, well, sure, situation could be coercive, even if you say no. Even if you can't say no, I agree there. I think we're disagreeing on, not on principle, but where you apply it. And I agree with your point about taking the fallacy you're talking about too far. And what might happen. So whatever consequence you talked about in your video, when you said, the fallacy of just because it's voluntary means it's freely chosen or whatever, I agree with that. So let's move on from there. You said we have an ethical and a legal obligation to basically give the water to the person in the desert, or just to help people in general. I think. Could be wrong. Please correct me if I am. I'm not trying to straw man you. But I'm not agreeing here. I don't believe I have any ethical obligation to do so. If I choose not to give water to the person because they look suspicious, or perhaps I know for a fact they've done very bad things, etc., I deny I have some obligation to help them. And even if they're a good person, I'd say it's definitely a virtuous and morally right move to save them. It's just, and all that, it's just, am I obligated? I'm unsure of that at best. And as far as legal obligations, expand on this one. I can only interpret this to mean that people are going to force me to save other people. But what sort of artificial society is the one that uses force to make people save other people? Clearly not one worth saving in of itself. Now, my point here is that if you're legally enforcing the ability or the moral obligation on other people to save other people, then it becomes artificial, because people aren't saving people because they want to save them. They're saving them because they know they're going to have force used against them if they don't. So it does seem kind of weird for me to be advocating legal obligations. And legal to me means forced. I mean, the current legal structure means that, and the only sort of ideas about legal sort of I don't know, jurisprudence? I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm really floundering on words to say here. The only sort of idea of legality and is that it has to be with enforcement. And so in my eyes, you're just trying to enforce your ethical obligations, which I think is okay, but not only through non-violent means, not through violent means. But please correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm not trying to straw man you, and I apologize if I did. So all work being coercive, thank you for clarifying that you don't think all work is coercive. You just think what it makes people go to work is coercive, or can be. I somewhat agree with that, but I think there are other points we can get into that are more substantial than that, so I'm not going to really debate that point. But on a side note, have you read Bob Black's The Abolition of Work? I happened to read it today, and I found it pretty interesting. Though I don't agree with many of his conclusions, or his overarching ones, like work should be abolished, I definitely think it's worth checking out, and it makes a lot of valid points. I'll put that link in the description. Any links I do mention, I'll put in the description. So, here we go. Here's where we get to more substantial things. Here's where we get to more substantial things. You talk about more power over others equals more coercion. Now, one big point you seem to keep making is that the more power, decision-making power, to be more exact, one has over another, increases the chances that the person in power is coercing them. I think this is certainly true to an extent. We're agreeing to an extent here. If a parent monopolizes decision-making power of a child in an area that they can make their own choices, but makes the choices for them anyway, I'd say they're being coercive. Would you agree? But let's bring this back for a second to some fundamental definitions. What is coercion to begin with? Coercion seems to me, maybe, this was off the top of my head, to be subtle or obvious pressures that are put on a person without their consent. So, for instance, the pressure of paying the bills on time, or the pressure of being at some place at a certain time might be coercing you, or motivating, I guess might be the right word in this case, maybe, to be somewhere. But that doesn't make sense to me. If you enter in a mortgage or a contract with someone when it's hard for you to pay for things as it is, then it seems to me like it's your own fault that the pressures are happening, and you're free to get out of the contract. Now, if I'm strawmanning you, or I'm misapplying the context of the conversation, again, I apologize, but I did get a little hung up on you. Not hung up in a bad way, but I got kind of stuck on your idea of mortgages being coercive, and I reject that. Not unilaterally, it's a contextual matter. I'm very skeptical of universals, a prioris, or however you pronounce that word, etc., etc. So let's move on from there. I also want to be clear that I'm not saying this to evade the debate. I just want to make sure our terms are well defined and we are both clear on what we mean, so language and communication can go more smoothly. So basically, define coercion for me. Tell me what you mean. Is my definition correct, or am I using it incorrectly? Let's hash this out. So you talk about the accumulation of capital as a problem. I don't agree that having property or money is necessarily an inherently bad thing. I certainly agree it can be a bad thing. But like you seem to suggest here, it seems to be an inherently bad thing. We disagree. Rather, I think it's a problem of the user, not the tool itself. That being said, money and property and wealth, capital, etc., in general, are just tools people can use to better their lives, or perhaps make other lives worse or better. It can go either way. However, which way it goes largely depends on the incentive structures that they face within the society they live in. So, for example, when one lives in a society without government, big corporations, etc., and instead have the ideas of voluntarism, free association, and competition, not only within the social systems, but outside of them too, there will be a lot of people wanting a lot of different things through a lot of ways. I don't see it likely that monopolies are going to form, or that you're going to have one bank set the interest or loan rates. Because you talked about interest or loan rates as being a problem in today's society. Instead, I think you'd see a lot of competition among banks, many different standards of money. Some communities or societies wouldn't have banks at all, perhaps, and would instead rely on gift economies or intricate barter networks, or others may take the mutual banking approach, or others may rely on the gold standard. What you're doing here, however, with the modern-day examples, is doing something called Left-Conflationism. Let me repeat that. It's called Left-Conflationism, and I'll link something in the description about it, which is a term used by Professor Roderick Long of Auburn University. It's a term he's coined. Left-Conflationism, as he termed it, is, quote, the error of treating the evils of existing corporatist capitalism as though they constituted an objection to a freed market. I do apologize. I do have trouble talking sometimes, and sometimes I rush myself. So if I'm clear in anything I say, I do apologize, and please let me know if I do that. So when you treat the problems of the current state capitalist market and say that these are problems would exist in a truly freed market, or problems like it, you conflate the things that constitute both areas of social relations. In a truly free market, or society in general, I believe you wouldn't see these big corporations because they'd be replaced by decentralized, pluralistic, horizontally controlled factories, self-managing cooperative firms, and more. This would be the case because the four monopolies Benjamin Tucker talks about in State Socialism and Anarchism, and if you don't know what that is, and you really should, it's a classic, I'll link it in the description. It's a video covering the whole pamphlet that was released by the Vegas Alliance of the Libertarian Left, and this video series was done by the Libertarian Left YouTube collective that I help organize. Not by myself, of course. That's why it's a collective. He talks about it in State Socialism and Anarchism, and they would be abolished. The four monopolies would be abolished, and many of the privileges, subsidies, and advantages corporations get from the state to exist would be as well as the charter itself, because, of course, corporations have a charter from the government to exist, and corporate personhood and other legal backings from the state would be gone. And actually, it is the state that helps these bigger players. How? Well, how do they get all this capital to begin with? Through hard work? We both know that this most likely isn't the case. And to the extent that people involved accumulated this large amount of wealth and property without the state, you're correct, of course, about property and wealth being damaging here or being used for domination. We agree insofar as that's correct. But I deny that such an extent exists to begin with. Instead, I posit that a large amount of these big supermarkets that you have in Australia, I suppose, handle the problems of information and calculation, risk, profit, and loss, as well as transportation costs and the problems of being a monopoly in general through subsidies from the state. Now, Kevin Carson has talked about transportation subsidies, and I'll put that in the description. A lot of these topics I do not have time within even the span of 2 YouTube videos to get through. So I'm going to put a lot of links at you. I hope you find the time to read them. I really encourage you to read these links before responding to me. Otherwise, we're just going to be talking past each other, and you're not going to be understanding where I'm coming from. Now, I encourage you, when you do respond to me, if you find the time, to send me links too. So it's, reciprocal, it's mutual. I'm learning things, you're learning things. I think that would be really beneficial for both of us. And I think that's a really good thing. There are far too many internals and external problems with being a monopoly of any sort. Usually it exists without some of help. Now, again, this is the reading material. Now, it's a bit long, but I think you can get through it, and I think you could not even read all of it and still get my main point, I think, and see the evidence behind it. And we can discuss the evidence afterwards, of course. Now, for more on what I'm talking about, I highly recommend Big Business and the Rise of American Statism by Roy A. Childs. I'll link that in the description, as well as Joseph Stromberg's The Role of State Monopoly Capitalism in the American Empire. I'll also link that. Now, that's from Mises.com, but it is a great essay, and it does back up a lot of the points I'm making. So don't, just dismiss it based on Mises. Last point I want to make in this video. I'm going to make another video soon after this, once I'm done editing this. Free market herring. Basically, you say that free markets mean a lack of regulations, and I want to say, and I'm going to say no. Well, actually, no. The free market doesn't mean no regulations. It just means it's free of state regulations. Regulations through public actions, individuals, and collective choices are still there. And I recommend reading Sheldon Richman's Regulation Red Herring, which I'll also link in the description for more on that. So anyway, this is part 1. Please let me, I doubt you'll be able to even watch this before I put up part 2. But I plan to put up part 2 sometime before the day is done. And I've got like 3 hours, so I'm fairly confident I'll be able to do that. Hopefully this doesn't cut out on me. And I'll see you in the next part. Thanks a lot, everybody.